Welcome to the Versions of Healing, the interview segment of the Healing Version podcast, a space created to uplift real stories from real people on their unique paths to healing. In each episode, we sit down with individuals from all walks of life, from survivors, overcomers, healers, and seekers, to talk about the experiences that shaped them and the steps they've taken towards wholeness. There's no single way to heal, and no story is too small. Whether the wounds come from trauma, grief, addiction, broken relationships, or self doubt, this segment is here to hold space for every voice and every version of healing. These conversations are raw, powerful, and rooted in truth, because healing doesn't just happen in silence, it happens when we share, listen, and grow together. So come as you are, and let's explore the many versions of healing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another transformational episode of Versions of Healing, the interview session of the Healing Version podcast. Today, we are unlocking the psychological side of performance with a true triple threat, Dr. Bramante. With over 20 years of experience as a talent agent, a PhD in psychology, and an advanced training in hypnosis and NLP, which stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. I think I said that right. Dr. Bramante brings an unmatched perspective to the mental struggles artists face, from imposter syndrome to self-sabotage. We will be diving deep into what holds creative things back. So, what's holding you back in the creative space and how to overcome it. Whether you're an actor, musician, comedian, writer, any type of creator, this episode is your backstage pass to proving psychological tools that fuel confidence, clarity, and success. So grab your journal, open your heart, and let's start healing the performer within you. Welcome to the show, Dr. Bramante. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I really want to thank you for inviting me and thank you for the warm and wonderful introduction. I'm really happy to be here. I really like what your podcast, the theme of your podcast, and the direction and all that. I was really excited when we agreed to interview. I was really happy about that.
Awesome. I am excited to have you here. So, Dr. Bramante, can you start off by telling us a little bit about your work and how you have helped people that are in the industry of performing and what type of work you do with them?
Sure. So my primary full-time occupation is I represent actors for film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover. So I kind of do that um, a while. I've been doing that for 20 years. And I also have a background in psychology. I have a doctorate in psychology. And so I combine the kind of both of them in some degree. When I was doing my doctoral dissertation, I the topic that I covered was self-sabotaging behavior in performing artists. So actors who were self-sabotaging. And I was able to do a doctoral study on that where I looked at like personality factors, I looked at self-esteem, I looked at a concept called self-efficacy, which is your belief in your ability to be productive. So and I kind of was examining self-defeating behavior. The reason why I chose that topic was when I first started working as an agent, 20 years ago in New York City, I was noticing a lot of actors were sabotaging themselves in a sense. And so what was happening there was while these actors were engaging in this self-sabotaging behavior, yet they were telling me verbally and consciously how much they wanted to find work. So I really couldn't figure out the major disconnect there. That was a major issue that came up. It's like, what's going on here? Where's this disconnect happening? Where on one hand they're telling me how much they want to work, but yet on the other hand, Their actions were telling me another story. And so, and it wasn't just one, it was several. So I figured that this is a problem that would be worth exploring. And my advisors at the time agreed with that and they liked it and I went with it. And so it led me to kind of understand actors a little bit more and understand the mindset in a more effective way. And then, years after getting my PhD, I wrote, my first book, Rise Up the Script, which works with confronting self doubt, masking self sabotage for performing artists. So that's initially how my work began in that area.
Okay, so when you have someone, do they normally come to you, or do you see this within the person and you maybe like go to them and like encourage them or invite them into your space?
Well, initially, as an agent, I either approach actors or they approach me that are talented, and while I may not necessarily start working with them on a coaching basis, I work with them to represent them on a career basis. So that's a wearing another hat. Now, unofficially, I can offer coaching, where I do it in an unofficial capacity. The thing about with self-sabotaging behavior, why it's kind of a treacherous sometimes behavior or pattern, it's because it's not conscious. Most of the time, very rare. I mean, it can through insight, but very rarely does somebody say, "Hey, I'm self-sabotaging today,"
Okay,
and it
that makes
doesn't
sense.
really happen.
Yeah.
So if you know that, that can sometimes add things in there to a bit. So that's what I just want to make clear. So it's not a conscious issue where someone says, "Hey, I'm self-sabotaging." So the best way to do this is it kind of sometimes point out inconsistencies, like, "Well, you're saying this, and this is what's happening," or maybe these things are you say are going wrong in your life, but let's take a look at what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it's the insight of, well, maybe you're not necessarily at fault, but it's about taking responsibility.
Yes, that accountability. Yes. Okay. So can you walk me through like how someone would come to you and start working with you as a coach? Are we talking people who you approach and you say, "Hey, I see that you are struggling here," or how does that?
Well, typically, like what I could do is like if I'm working with an actor and they're not booking and they're getting frustrated, then I would take stock of what's happening here. Let's look at your portfolio, let's look at your marketing materials, let's look at your demos, and then now it could be what's going on here in a sense. What's happening here?
Mhm.
What's holding you back in a sense?
Okay. Can you tell me how NLP and hypnosis plays into your work?
Sure. Well, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, is all about working modeling excellence. So it's working with both the linguistic part of his language, communication, and then also working with the mind, your mental processes to reprogram your life. So combining emotion and language. So what I feel is important, and even with hypnosis, hypnosis works with subconscious mind, and so it can help with limiting beliefs. It can help with changing your mindset. So one of the things I work with actors is avoiding the language that you can speak in a sense, or avoiding the watching the type of language that you speak.
Mhm.
So not just externally, but internally. So let's look at what you're saying here to yourself. How do you identify yourself? So identity plays a huge role in your success, and that's part. We change your identity so that it can help, or how you identify yourself, so that it becomes you're setting yourself up more for success. So I'll give you an example. A lot of actors will say, "I'm a starving artist," or "I'm a struggling artist," and The moment that you start using that language of starving or struggling or broke, it's creating a reality for you
Mhm.
of struggling and broke. So let's change that to I'm a professional working actor, I'm a professional speaker, I'm a professional coach, rather than you're just aspiring, because it sounds almost like you're telling yourself you're not ready yet. You're not there yet.
Mhm.
So it's using that little slight reframe there. So and it comes you're starting moving away from a scarcity mindset to a mind of abundance and prosperity and productivity. And so when you move from that space of scarcity to productiveness, there's a shift there. And so sh- with working with hypnosis and NLP is working on shifting your identity and shifting how you identify to the world.
Okay. So the so I guess that's when you say like you have what you say, or if you're speaking these negative things, your subconscious mind starts to believe it. And so you start to move in a way where you're a starving artist versus if you are using uplifting or you're saying I am a professional performer. You're basically teaching your mind and your body what to believe about you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what you're telling yourself, but you're also telling the world around you
Yes, so that they can get in
what's
line
happening.
and yes, okay. I like that. That makes a lot of sense and that it's something that I say all the time here on the Healing Version is, you have what you say. If you say that you don't have it or you're not doing well or that's what it is, you are the author of your race and your life and what you are destined to have. Yes, I like that a lot. So, are there any specific like daily habits or mental exercises that you would recommend that someone can do if they are struggling with being a performer?
Sure. Well, I would say the first thing would be to keep yourself active in classes too. Number one, just in general, just to keep your skill set sharp. And that's with any type of performing arts, whatever you're gifted in. So that would be the focus. Would be the first thing was keep yourself active in class. The next thing I would often do is set intentions for each day, and so whether it's that you're going to have successful day by looking for work, or that you're going to be practicing or putting out content. So set intentions for the day would be number two. The third thing is visualization. So and that could mean look differently for everybody depending on what it is you're doing. If you're going as an actor, if you're coming up for an audition, the what one thing you can focus on is visualizing the audition going very, very well. The other way you could look at it is if you're going on a job interview, if you're going to give a presentation, if you're going to give a performance of some kind, spend some time mentally drilling it in your head and your brain, and not only just going through the mechanics of it, but where it's actually becoming more and more successful at it. So that's what I would definitely say to do that, because the brain does not know the difference between fiction and reality.
Right. That's good. I like that. So basically, setting the intention, setting yourself up for success when you wake up in the morning. As soon as you get up, set those intentions. Imagine, I'm really good about like imagining things happening in a great way. I do it before I go to sleep. Like if I'm not tired, I'll close my eyes and I'll like think of something that I want to happen that really good. And I just walk myself through the whole thing and I just create a whole story of whatever that thing is working out in my thoughts. Um,
Mhm.
so, and I don't know, that's something I've been doing, I think, even like since a kid, just wanting things to work out good. So I like that. Really, really good. So, how do you work with performers who have skills and opportunities, but they continue to block themselves mentally?
So one of the things I would do is gently but firmly remind kind of point it out that they are you really their own worst enemy. They're getting in their own way. in a way, in a sense. And then, because the important thing to reduce that pattern and any capability, you have to take ownership of
Mhm.
what's happening. If you don't take ownership, you're not ready yet to change. So, it would really, if I'm going to do that, they would, number one, have to be ready to take ownership in whatever it is they're doing
Mhm.
and whatever it is behavior they're kind of putting out there. So the first step was kind of working with them to take ownership. So that would be kind of like the first kind of step I would do. And then working through, what are your fears? What is it that's holding you back? Is it fear of failure? Is it fear of success even? Which can sometimes come up as a theme. So what is it that's, like I would even ask them, like, what do you think is holding you back?
Mhm. Hmm.
And then depending on the answer that I would receive, the next thing is working through that.
Okay. So, can you think of a success story that you are open to sharing with us today from like beginning, from when you first met the performer, what their self-sabotaging or whatever issues they were having that were blocking them from being a great performer to where they were able to be successful and perform?
Yeah. Well, there was one person that for a while I used to kind of be a regular guest instructor in an acting class, and there was this one particular actress who is now my client, but at the time she was playing very small, very, very tiny. She wasn't really owning her power. And when you spoke to her kind of like off camera, she had a bit of a gravitas and to her, which was powerful. But when her acting came in, it became very meek and soft spoken and tiny, and almost
Mhm.
like she was hiding. So it's kind of like reclaiming her power. And so using that same gravitas that she has in her speaking in her daily life, let's transform that into your acting. Now let's add more gravitas and to that. And it was a confidence issue mainly, not just a mechanical, acting mechanical performance thing. It was also a mental thing about her playing too small. And so working through that, her acting teacher worked with her on incorporating the persona that she, was presenting off camera to her roles. My kind of work was helping her with her confidence. And then it was like that 1-2 punch, in a sense, really helped her improve her game, so much so that she booked a couple of speaking roles soon after that on TV. So I went from like a period of 9 or 10 years in the bookings to 3 bookings in a few months. So that I feel is very, very powerful.
Okay, so the confidence. So going from being shy and scared in front of the camera to being able to be that person she was off cam.
Hmm.
Okay, that's powerful. So she's one of your clients right now today doing successful work.
Yes,
That's
she's
awesome.
great. Yeah, it's great.
So does she continue to work with you on things to keep that confidence up and be able to continue to be that
If
person?
she needs to, but she already has most of the confidence already now to do
Okay.
that. That she really does great auditions, and so when I need her to. So yes, I mean I'm always a resource for her anytime that she needs anything.
Okay. That's awesome. I like that. It's a great story. So, what would you say is one belief or mindset shift you wish every performer, actor, person who is a creative would adopt today?
I would say look at transforming failure into feedback. So rather than looking at like a missed opportunity, like or mistakes, and transforming that to mistakes are opportunities for growth and stepping stones. So your failure is more of a stepping stone for success.
Okay, that's really good. So, because I know people personally who have, they have talents, they have things that they can do, but they're like, "Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't know where to go. I don't know." And I'm just like, you can kind of figure it out. Like we have this worldwide web where you can find out information, you can find
Hmm.
out about gigs, but it's like a excuse.
It really is an excuse, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have this conversation a lot with like some people. Like, well, it's either I don't have time or I can't afford to do this. Okay, so and this is where like the gentle but firmness comes in, like a little bit of tough love. Like you tell me you have no time, you just spent an hour on your phone scrolling social media. That
Yes.
could have been an hour. You don't know how much powerful you could have done in just an hour a week
Yes.
in getting your goals done. I was telling another, just for, I unfortunately didn't get to work with this person, but I had an interview with someone, who kept complaining, like, I can't afford all these this classes, this training. Okay. Um, or I can't afford these, updated headshots. Okay. At the end of the interview, she's telling me, like, look at the newest iPhone I bought. And I said, okay. And that's what I said. I said, but you just told me an hour ago, 15, minutes, an hour in the beginning of the meeting, that you couldn't afford new classes, but yet you just bought an iPhone and you're paying so much per month for the iPhone.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about
Right.
that.
Right. Priorities, what you really want to do. I think a lot of people miss that for a lot of this stuff that we do, like even having a podcast, you have to invest in yourself. There's some things
Yes.
that you have to pay for even before you start to see revenue from it. But it's an investment. It's a seed that you're planting into your future. And that's just something you have to wrap your mind around. Like, I'm not getting anything from it now, but it's a seed that I'm planting in the ground that is later going to sprout into a big, beautiful tree of success.
Absolutely. And it is an investment. And, uh, and you don't have to necessarily, break the bank, but you still have to make investments. And
Yes.
priorities are important because, if you want to be an actor, you have to invest in training, you have to invest in headshots, you have to invest in networking and all of that. And that takes time and sometimes a little bit of money. And the same thing goes with, obviously starting a podcast. And I was hearing, recently, because I've been to a couple of podcasting events, that most people, who, either who want to produce podcasts never do it, or they only get like past episode 3 or 4, and then they're done with
Mhm.
it. And I would think, coming from my background and my with content creation, I think in order to really consider this podcast as successful, we have to have at least 100 to 200 episodes in the can before you can say, I'm starting to see some traction and success.
Mhm.
And
That
I think a lot of
consistency.
that real, and it's also about being consistent too.
Yes.
Um, and that's with anything too. It's like that momentum has to be there. The consistency has to be there.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So can you break down imposter syndrome, like what it looks like in performance?
Sure. So, I mean, it's a little bit more. I mean, the textbook definition would be like feeling like a fraud. It's a little bit more than that. So it might be like coming up with like self doubting yourself, and especially as an actor, when you're getting so many no's a lot of
Mhm.
times, and there's a drought or a dry spell. What can happen is you start to realize, am I really, is this really something I should be doing? Do I really deserve to be here? And the same thing goes with like, you know, putting out content on social media. Let's say you first put some stuff out and you get much engagement. You start to think, is it me?
Mhm.
Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe, who am I to do this? Or who am I to this authority? And you start doubting yourself. And that's what it really looks like. And I think a myth is that, one of the things I often say, a myth is that only weaker people have imposter syndrome. No, some of the high achievers, grapple with this from time to time. Some of the most peak performers do this, engage from time to time. I've even heard of like A-list actors will sometimes after they walk off the set for a day of filming, even start wonder, is this really effective? Did I really make the right choices? So it really affects performers of all levels. And that's the biggest thing. And it's actually okay sometimes to doubt yourself. The important thing is not to let it dictate your behavior though. That's
Yes.
key.
Yes. I feel like I went through that probably about a year ago, I stopped recording my podcast and I was just like, you know what? I got so much going on. I got school, I got kids, I got work. I had all the everything, a pile of excuses as to why I couldn't record. And then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to start recording next month. And then something else will happen. And then I'll be like, okay, in
Hmm.
2 weeks. And then something else will happen. And I'm just like, when stuff slows down and when nothing's happening, I'll get back to recording. And it was like God came and was like, hey, did you know that if you keep pushing it off, that you're never going to do it because something's going to always happen? Life is not going to
Hmm.
stop happening so that you can start back recording. So either you're going to start recording and work through the life things that are happening, or you just call it quits. I'm like, I'm not calling it quits. This is my baby. I love podcasts and I love what I do.
Yeah.
So now I just find the time. So what I do now is I implement times where I'm going to record, when I'm going to edit. And what I've realize is what a lot of these things that we want to do, that's our thing, that's not a 9 to 5 or we're going to clock in somewhere, we'll continue to put them on the back burner. So what we have to do is treat them as we would someone else's business. How you go into and you clock into these corporate places, treat your performance, your acting, whatever, in that same light. Make time for it.
Right.
If it's just 30 minutes to an hour a day, put something
Yes.
out there, promote yourself,
Hmm.
make a video, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, do something to put yourself out there so that you're not getting to the point where you're just like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. You never know what might blow up. The thing you
Yeah,
least
and
expect will blow up.
it could happen a month from now, 2 months from now, and I would even think just even on the podcast host, you never know who's gonna see the episode or see a soundbite and be moved by it, and it could be something that a month later, because most of the content we put out is evergreen, so it's gonna stay there for ever. So it really is all about, and sometimes you can impact people, and I learned this even as a teacher too, is you can impact a lot of people and not even know it because they don't say
Yes.
anything to you, but yet it moves people. So yeah, I mean, if somebody says I don't have time, well, you can make time because again, stop scrolling on social media,
Mm-hmm.
stop watch binging on Netflix, which is great and all, but
Yeah. We make
focus
time
on
for
that.
that too. I definitely make time to binge watch
No,
stuff.
and you
So
should have some downtime. Absolutely.
yeah,
Especially
you
being a
have to treat
parent.
yourself too, but make time for
But
your craft, what you love, what you have a passion for. Make time for it.
yes.
And there was something that you said that I was going to come back on, but go ahead. I'll come back.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important is
Mhm.
just to make time and find the time. That's really what I would say is really find the time for it. So that I
Yes.
would really suggest that. Find the time for it and make the
Yeah.
time, make the time for it. So that would be the biggest thing. And again, put it on your calendar. A big thing I kind of talk
Mhm.
about too is put stuff on a calendar. Write it in there. So if you're gonna put stuff out there, schedule it. When we put stuff out there, not I'm going to put that out there because then it becomes a Sunday. Someday I'll do this,
Mhm. Yep.
and then it'll never get done.
Procrastinating, pushing it back, not
Yes.
standing on business. Yeah. There's a lot of great talent. There's a lot of people like sleeping on their dreams just because they're afraid of, I think a lot of people are afraid of not succeeding. It's like, how will you ever know if you don't put yourself out there? You never know if you'll be successful or not. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
all right. Well, Albert, I thank you so much for being here today. Can you please share with the audience how they can connect with you, especially those who are trying to heal from that self-sabotaging and those psychological things that are holding them back from their craft and creativity?
Sure. Well, you can find me on my website, albertbramante.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn under Albert Bramante or Instagram at Dr. Albert Bramante. I'd love to connect with you and possibly help you in any way I can.
Awesome. And I will also put Albert's information in the description of this video so that you can connect with him. If you are out there and you are struggling with being a performer or reaching your highest good, reach out to Albert, see how he can help you get to where you need to go, figure out what's going on with you, and see how we're going to take a look in the mirror and figure out how we're going to turn that thing around and be successful. I want to thank you for being here today and listening to another episode of the Healing Version podcast with me, your host, Deborah. I hope that you have a wonderful, fantastic day. And please remember to follow us on all social media. I appreciate the love and support. Thank you. Peace.